The Lord is my best friend and my shepherd. I always have more than enough. Or the NIV, the Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. This is the beginning of Psalm 23. And last week we talked about the connection between this psalm and John chapter 10, where Jesus talks about being the good shepherd, that his sheep know his voice and follow him. That Jesus leads differently than other leaders, and only Jesus can lead us into what he teaches in John 10:10, life abundant. That everybody else comes to steal, but Jesus leads into this life abundant. And so for the next few sessions, we're going to talk about what it looks like, the promises of following Jesus, the Good Shepherd. Probably to a point where we can honestly say, hopefully to a point where we say, I and truly mean it from the depths of our heart and from our souls, I lack nothing. That I have more than enough. That in spite of the craziness of this world around me, I lack nothing. I have more than enough, that I even lie down in green pastures, and I am beside still waters. You see, Israel is not like our terrain around here or our environment around here. I can go outside and I look and I see green pasture everywhere. I see this beautiful field and I see greenery everywhere and life abundant. Israel's terrain is a lot different than that. They only have 2 rainy seasons, and so much of the land is this dry, drought desert. That there is almost this lifelessness around it, but there are these patches of green pastured land. And so the imagery that Jesus is leading us to, the imagery that David gives here, is that Jesus is leading us out of this dry, thirsty land, out of this exhaustion, out of this weariness, out of this worried land, void of life, out of this isolation and drought, out of this loneliness that we are in, out of this what looks around and these just kind of this lifelessness around us. And he is bringing us out of that into green pastures. And I'm not saying that Jesus is saying, hey, go out of your house and go find some place to frolic and have this awesome party. No, what I'm saying is metaphorically, he is leading us out of this dry, thirsty land into a place of peace, abundance, green pastures where we rest and lie down. It is the custom of shepherds that they would lead their sheep to these green pastures over this terrain of desert and dryness about from noon till about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and they would rest there, and that's all they would do is rest and find this peace. The image is Jesus is saying, follow me, listen to my voice, and I will lead you into this place of rest, this place of peace, this place of tranquility, that you can find security in me. You see, don't miss this. Green pastures. It's no coincidence here that the psalm says green pastures, plural, and still waters, plural. Many times we think that this only happens once, that we become followers of Christ and we get this one chance at peace. And no, it's not like this. You get this one-shot thing. This is offered to you over and over again. It is this perpetual, habitual rest for our souls offered over and over again. This stillness and peace amongst the crazy, anxious life. And that kind of gives way to what Jesus leads us into. You see, other voices don't lead us into that. There's this psalm that I came across, Psalm 77, when in preparing for this. And the writer here, his name is Asaph, and he writes from the bottom of just kind of what he's truly feeling in his heart. He said, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night I stretched out untiring hands, but I would not be comforted. Whew. Sounds kind of familiar. He said, I remember you, God, and I groaned. I meditated and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing, and I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days, the years long ago. I remembered my songs in the night. My heart meditated, and my spirit asked, will the Lord reject forever Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? There's an example of going on a journey where Asaph really asks the questions that surface here, inevitable questions that we probably feel now. Has God forgotten me? Has his loving kindness ceased? Has he promised? Has his promises come to an end? Has his loving kindness gone away from us and compassion ceased from us? Has he been angry and now has brought this upon us? And we're faced with these kind of questions. Has he withdrawn from us? When we're faced with these kinds of questions and the sleeplessness and agony of this, we are faced with this question, this choice laid before us. Are we going to lose faith and turn away from God? Or are we going to listen to his voice that leads us into green pastures and still waters? We may feel very overwhelmed, chaotic, worried, anxious. What in the world is going on? How are we going to get through this? What does next year hold for me? What does college look like? Are my relationships going to crumble? I don't know what this holds, and I'm getting tired of my siblings and my family, and this is going to go on for 30 days, and you are getting this overwhelming feeling of anxiety and worry. The invitation for you this evening is from the very voice of Jesus, that you would come in, that you would rest, that you would deeply and truly trust him, that you would lie in these green pastures and still waters of peace. You say, how in the world do we do this? You see, John 10, Jesus also says that he is the gate. The point here is, in order for the sheep in the pen or in our house to get to the green pastures, in order for the sheep to get to these locations, they must pass through the gate. That it is only through Jesus, through this gate, that you find this rest, this peace, this calmness, this security. That you enter and go through the gate and listen to his voice, that his voice may lead us over rocky terrain, over difficult times, over this dry and thirsty land, this isolation, this land that looks void of life. And it may be difficult, but it leads to green pastures of a voice, a calmness, a peace, that in spite of all that is around us, we can still have green pastures and still waters. So are you trusting Jesus, the Good Shepherd, to work and accomplish the things that right now feel very impossible? That I can't control this. I don't know how to get through this. You see, true peace here is not found in a Netflix series. True rest here is not found in your own voice to calm you. This not being overcome by worry and fear is not found in recreation or busyness, not found in voices that is not Jesus, not found in doctors or even parents, that only found in Jesus. It is this habitual, regular visitation and drawing into Jesus that leads us to multiple green pastures and multiple still waters. This is the picture of the Christian life, at peace with God, that Colossians talks about in Colossians 1. 1 John 3:20, where we are kind of condemning ourselves and bringing us down and saying, God doesn't love me, or I'm not good enough. And Jesus, it says that Jesus is greater than our hearts and our situations. This is the picture of Christianity, surrounded by desert, surrounded and isolated by dry and thirsty land that seems lifeless and void of all good things. Or, put it in another analogy that Pastor Luke talked about on Sunday, that the storms are all around us, bringing such terror and fear, and Jesus sits and calms the storm by his voice. Listen to that. His voice calms the waters to be still, just like in Psalm 23 and John 10. His voice leads his sheep to still waters. Jesus gets up in the middle of the storm, and his voice calms the waters to be still. This is life surrendered to the Good Shepherd, where his voice leads us to green pastures and still waters amidst a dry land and a crazy storm, waters of peace and calmness. I was also reminded of Psalm 91. And I want to read this for you. It's about Jesus as God's protection when we find him as our good shepherd or we surrender to him. It says, when you sit enthroned under the shadow of Shaddai, or God, you are hidden in the strength of God Most High. He's the hope that holds me and the stronghold to shelter me, the only God for me and my great confidence. He will rescue you from every hidden trap of the enemy. He will protect you from false accusation and any deadly curse. His massive arms are wrapped around you, protecting you. You can run under his covering of majesty and hide. His arms of faithfulness are a shield, keeping you from harm. You will never worry about an attack of demonic forces at night, nor have a fear of a spirit of darkness coming against you. Don't fear a thing. Whether by night or by day, dangers will not trouble you, nor the powers of evil launched against you. You see, our greatest defense against all the chaos and all the craziness of life that is going on, is the greatest defense against the sickness is really, truly, honestly finding shelter in the Lord Most High. The purpose of all this, purposes of Psalm 23, these Psalm 77 and 91, is found in Psalm 23:3, that he refreshes my soul. The purpose of all this is so that our souls will be restored and refreshed, that we are found alive again, not dead, not void of peace, but that we are at peace with God, ourselves, and our others. Where the situation in life is completely unknown and uncharted territory, that it does not overwhelm you, but you are led into green pastures and still waters. That you would let go of all that you are fearful of and worried about. That you would let go of all that you cannot control. That you would let go of all that is overwhelming you and distressing you. That you would let go and learn to trust him more and more and more. The idea here in all of these Psalms is this continual visitation with Jesus, this continual listening to his voice, this continually finding shelter in him. It's not just this one time or once. It is not just every now and again. It is this over and over again thing where we continually visit him as a shelter. We continually listen to his voice. And you see in Psalm 77, the one where that guy, Asaph, asked all those questions. He says, this is my defense against this worry. This is my appeal. He says, I remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. Your ways, God, are holy. What God is as great as our God? You are a God who performs miracles, and you display your power among the peoples. With your mighty arm, you redeem your people. And though your path has led through the sea and deep waters, through mighty waters, your footprints were with us, even though they were not seen. You led your people like a flock. That even in the darkest of times, our defense is that we remember Jesus Christ conquered death itself, that he trampled over death and he brought us from darkness to life, brought us from a dry, thirsty, isolated land into green pastures and still waters, teeming with life and a peace and a calmness. The challenge this week is that every day you read Psalm 23, 1 and 2. With the hope of eventually memorizing all of Psalm 23. And every day read Psalm 77 and read Psalm 91, 1 through 6. That's the challenge this week. Every day read these three Psalms, 23, 1 and 2, 77, and 96, 1 through 6. I love you, family. Love you, one. You guys be safe. Find him, shelter in him over and over again, finding green pastures, listening to his voice over and over again. Love you. Have a great week.